Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. Newcastle head down to Hillsborough to face Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup. I'm joined by Owls writer Ricky Charlesworth to get the insight into Newcastle's opponents tomorrow. Ricky, thank you very much for popping on to the podcast. Hope you had a good new year.
Yeah, good one, thanks. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Glad to be covering some cup football. The other cup, the League Cup, has been going really well for Newcastle into the quarterfinals, and that is on Tuesday. Going to be interesting to see if that plays any impact on Eddie Howe's team for tomorrow. In many ways, Ricky, Newcastle fans might look at Sheffield Wednesday's position, second in the league, and maybe wonder if there's some similarities where the focus maybe relies elsewhere, but the FA Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was looking at the stats before the game. I think between the two sides, they've lost four league games all season, which is, these are two teams, they're not used to losing matches. Obviously, there's levels. Obviously, Newcastle 2 levels above, but, I think the leveler in this game is the fact that obviously Hillsborough are expecting a big crowd. The atmosphere will be really good. And it's a chance as well for Wednesday to show what they can do, obviously, against a team, much higher up. Because that's where they want to be eventually, 20 odd years out of the Premier League, at the very least, they want to be back in the Championship. They want to be having these exciting nights under the lights at Hillsborough. So, yeah, I think from a Wednesday perspective, I get what you're saying is, the priority is obviously the league. But if you offered them a good deep cup run, I think they'd snap your hand off as well. And I think it's that old saying, isn't it? Winning breeds winning, the momentum that they'll get from that. So, yeah, I think it'd be a really good, interesting contest.
Definitely, and with Newcastle, it seems everybody wants to take them on and beat them. We've seen them in previous games. We saw them, last year in the FA Cup, they got knocked out by Cambridge, and it just seems that everybody wants to beat Newcastle. How will Sheffield Wednesday approach us in terms of the way they're set up? Are you expecting a strong side, first of all, I guess, is the first question to answer?
I think they'll make changes because that's what Darren Moore does. Win, lose or draw, he makes changes. Predicting or trying to predict his lineup is very hard, even more so. Excuse me, even more so for an FA Cup tie. But yeah, there's a couple of injury worries. We don't actually speak to Darren until 2:00 today, so kind of second guessing the team at this point. But Barry Bannon's the one. Obviously, I know Newcastle fans will know about him from his time at Villa on Wednesday when you play in the Championship. But if he's fit, I think he has to play in this game. This is the kind of game that he would revel in. Live on TV against a big club. So yeah, it's question marks over him. But yeah, I think he'll change it up a bit. He'll make a few changes. And yeah, the other worry for Wednesday is centre half, because they've got a player called Mark McGuinness who's on loan. Has been brilliant. Been outstanding as the centre of a 3 centre halves, and he's actually going back to Cardiff. So tomorrow will probably be his swan song. So yeah, whoever he's up against, they're guaranteed to have a tough game. Whether that's Callum Wilson, whether that's Chris Wood, etc. Whoever. So yeah, tomorrow trying to predict Wednesday's team will be very hard. But I think, like I say, I think it's got all the ingredients for an interesting cup tie.
It certainly has. I think there's a reason why the BBC maybe picked it to show it 11 BBC One. Yeah. Eddie Howe's team, it's very similar to, as you say there, with Sheffield Wednesday. It's hard to predict what Eddie Howe does. He said today in his press conference, I haven't picked the team yet as I want to assess training today, but we have a good squad. You always want to give people opportunities to stake their claim to play, but you have to get the balance right. In yesterday's podcast episodes, me and John Gibson, we spoke about the potential Newcastle United side, and it is so hard to predict because I've got a feeling he might play a similar side to the one that drew at Arsenal, because as you say with Sheffield Wednesday, it's all about that momentum. You want to keep winning games. It's going to be an interesting team sheet. You mentioned there Callum Wilson, Chris Wood. I think that's probably one of the changes that we could see. Maybe Chris Wood come in for Callum Wilson. But in terms of the way Sheffield Wednesday actually play, if they do make changes, does that change the way they play, or will they play as they have done, in League One for how they have done this season?
I think personnel might change, but I'd imagine that the system will stay the same. He's kind of settled now at the minute on a back three, wing backs, so like a 3-5-2 effectively. So the other day, I had Malik Wilkes as a auxiliary right wing back. He's not a wing back, but he was kind of plugging a hole. He had Josh Windass, who's got a hat trick, playing just behind the front too. So yeah, he's kind of got players. He's recruited players that can play multiple positions. But in terms of his system and his tactics, I think again, trying to second guess what he'll do is pretty tough. But I think it'll be 3 at the back with the 2 wing backs. But again, I think this is a game where Wednesday have nothing to lose, and I know people say that a lot, cup games, but they really don't. They're on a 3-month unbeaten run. The only loss in that was to Southampton on penalties at the League Cup. So, like I say, Newcastle on Wednesday, they don't lose many games. They're not used to losing. So I think it can be really interesting. But whatever team Newcastle put out, you look up down their squad. I suppose as well, you'll be quite eager to kind of not come a cropper like you did against Cambridge, wasn't it, last year? Was that in the 3rd round?
That was in the 3rd round. Yeah, this time last year, Kieran Trippier's first game. Newcastle, it just added to the bad place Newcastle were in at that time, staring in the face. And I mean, it goes to show just how big of the turnaround it's been. But yeah, how big of a factor will the Hillsborough crowd play in this? And we know Newcastle, from a perspective of St James's Park, is that old cliche of a 12th man. Is it the same down for the Owls?
I hope so, yeah. I mean, like I said, the home form this season has been really good. I think it's the 2nd best home form. They lost once to Barnsley, like a local derby. That was back at the start of the season. But since then, they've been really good at home. I'm trying to think of the last big occasion like this we had at Hillsborough. Obviously, during COVID, when it was fans were locked out, I'm pretty sure it was a Man City. They played Man City in an FA Cup game just before the lockdown. So that's nearly 3 years ago. So yeah, but they weren't in a good run of form like they are now then. So yeah, I'm expecting the crowd will be 30,000 plus, like you say, live on TV. And yeah, like I say, I keep saying it's got all the ingredients for a great tie. Hopefully it's not a dead rubber 0-0. But yeah, I think the crowd will play its part. But likewise, Newcastle have sold their allocation out, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, bringing a big following down from Tyne's side. I'm right in thinking that Sheffield Wednesday coming to this game on the back of a 5-0 win over Cambridge, ironically.
Yeah.
I mean, how much of a boost is that? Not only to be winning games, but seemingly scoring for fun as well.
Yeah, that was the kind of the game where they've been threatening to do that for a while. They've lost. That was 13 without loss now in the league. But the wins within those have been kind of 1 or 2 goal margins. So that was the joint biggest win of the season. Like I said, Cambridge I think they had a few injuries, but they couldn't lay a glove on Wednesday. They were really, backs to the wall. I think they had 1 shot on target all game, and yeah, Wednesday just kind of put them to the sword. So obviously not expecting that again tomorrow, but it's that attacking intent. That's what fans have been calling out for. There was a recent game where there was a few jeers after a 0-0, and they were 3rd in the league at that point. So you kind of get the expectation of the fan base. It's similar when Newcastle were in the Championship. The club is, without wanting to sound, as though it should be in the Championship, let's have it right. It's not a League One club. And likewise, when Newcastle were in the 2nd tier, it's not a 2nd tier club. So the fans, push that expectation onto the players and managers. So yeah, I think that's all they want to see. All any fans want to see is a team that attacks and goes for it.
And in terms of the fans looking ahead to the game against Newcastle, is there excitement, but also is there kind of an acceptance? And maybe, like you said earlier on the show, they've got nothing to lose. Maybe they are expecting a defeat, but they'll go out and they expect their team to go out and give it their best shot. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, like you said earlier, the bread and butter is the league. The promotion. They've been in this league. This is the 2nd year now in this league. I know a team not too far from you guys that was in this league for 4 years. Again, which is unthinkable. That can't happen. 3rd year would be, unacceptable for a size of Wednesdays, for a club the size of Wednesday. So the aim is the Championship, getting promoted. But as a little sideshow, if they can put on a good performance against a team obviously like Newcastle they've lost once all season. What was it? Anfield, last minute goal. So again, a team that does not lose easily. I think they'd accept that. And like I say, yeah, all you can ask for is putting up a good performance and giving it a go. And I'm pretty sure they'll do that after the recent run they've been on.
There's a lot of question over whether Alan St-Maximin may start tomorrow for Newcastle. So there's a few comments from people watching live. Right. From Roger here asking about your right wing back, who, if Alan St-Maximin does start over on Newcastle's wing, you'll be up against your right wing back. He's asking, is he any good? Who is he?
Well, yeah, this is the question. Again, right wing back has changed in recent weeks. So the other day it was Malik Wilks, who anyone with any knowledge of him knows he's not a defender. But he actually played really well. But Cambridge didn't really trouble him. The game before that was Alex Myton, who was on loan from Forest. Again, not really a full-back by trade. They've got Liam Palmer, who can play as a right wing-back, Jack Hunt. So it could be one of those four. And, that's not any kidology. That is literally, it could be any of them. But I think the one that would be best, like I say, if Maximin plays, I wouldn't want to see Wilks at right wing-back, put it that way.
We've talked about... Well, obviously Newcastle coming into this game as favourites, and maybe the expectation from the Sheffield Wednesday side. Eddie Howe said in his press conference about the game tomorrow, the biggest thing is how we approach the game and the mentality of the group, the motivation levels, professionalism, desire. We're under no illusions that it'll be a difficult task, but it'll be more difficult if we're not in the right place ourselves. So he's doing what he usually does. It's all about what Newcastle can do. That tends to be his approach to every game, not really worrying too much about the opposition. Is the Sheffield Wednesday manager of a similar approach? Don't worry too much about the opposition. Let's just concentrate on the ability that we've got within the camp.
Yeah, very much so. I think he does make a point in most press conferences to kind of not talk up the opposition, but pay them respect, but not go over the top kind of thing. But yeah, I think some fans have kind of, if there's one criticism more, that the fans have in recent weeks they've kind of been of that mindset that we're going out to stop the other side rather than, doing what we do best. But I think he's took the shackles off last two games. Last game in particular against Cambridge, there was 4 strikers that started, and I include Wilks as a striker in that. So, that showed the intent from the off. Whether he'll do that again against, obviously, high-quality opposition tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'd like to see him, go for it tomorrow, but not be gung-ho and not be stupid and leave it open at the back. But yeah, I think it's getting that balance right. As I said, I don't think Wednesday's got anything to lose. But what you don't want is an absolute, a tonking, because that could really hold momentum.
Well, I mean, the FA Cup was always sold as like the cup of dreams, isn't it? The underdogs always talked up. How easy will it be for Darren Moore to tap into that? And because everyone loves a cup upset, don't they? And it does tend to happen in these early rounds of the FA Cup. So how easy will it be for the gaffer to tap into that and kind of use that as a motivation to get the best out of his team?
Yeah, I think in terms of the cup, they did well in the League Cup. They pushed Southampton really, really well. Like I said, that was their last defeat, and it was on penalties. So, they can take it to Prem teams. And Everton, I think that was last season. I might be getting confused with the COVID seasons. They definitely played a Premier League team last year, and like I say, gave a good account of themselves. But yeah, I think it goes back to it, doesn't it? If you get a good run in this competition, I think that can only aid you in your league. And I know people go, there's midweek games, there's more matches, but winning breeds winning. Momentum is massive, especially in the title race that Wednesday are in. It's really tight. Not many points between us and Ipswich and Plymouth. So I think a good cup run would be nice. It obviously boosts the coffers as well, which is, even for a club like Wednesday, I don't know what they get, TV money tomorrow, 100 grand, something like that, which is, we're in January as well. So every bit of dosh helps, I suppose. Not so much for Newcastle nowadays, but
yeah, slightly better finances perhaps than we've been used to in recent years. We've got a few more comments here. People asking whether the likes of Alexander Isak will play for Newcastle. He's been out for 5 months. Eddie Howe said that he's going to assess him in training. I would think he's likely to come and back on the bench, it's hard to be out for 5 months and then come straight back into the swing of things. But what a dilemma to be in, how to be able to have these players on the bench. In terms of Sheffield Wednesday's biggest threat, and I know you say it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what Dan Moore is going to do it more with his side, but who is the biggest threat that Newcastle would need to look out for?
As I said earlier, if he's fit, Bannon, 100%, is the best player in that squad. I think he's the best player in that division on his day. I think there's nobody could really touch him. Again, he's a championship quality player at the worst, I think. But yeah, if he plays, everything goes through him. Like I say, he's just there. He's like the engine room. He's the creativity. He's the pass masters. But if he doesn't play, that's not to say there's not going to be threats. I think Michael Smith's a really interesting one. So he's not sure how much Newcastle fans know about him, but he's a boyhood Geordie. I think he had a season ticket at St James's. Big Newcastle fan. He actually had an interview where he spoke recently about Alan Shearer. Obviously, not alone in idolising Shearer, but and we're actually speaking to Smith later on today, so I'm sure he'll speak more about that. But yeah, he's a big target man. I think he scored 20 goals in each of his last 2 or 3 seasons in League One. He's had a bit of a slow start, but he's scored a few. I think he's got 11 in all comps so far. So he's kind of hitting the ground. He's sort of hitting his stride of late. So he'll be a threat. He's a big target man. But as I say, if Bannon plays, he'll be the one for Newcastle to kind of try and keep quiet, because most or 90% of good stuff that Wednesday do goes through Bannon.
Michael Smith, a product of the Wallsend Boys Club, so Newcastle fans know all about that, and I'm sure he'll relish playing against his boyhood club tomorrow. In terms of the weakness, then, where is Sheffield Wednesday's biggest vulnerability?
I would say probably down that right wing back role. Like I said, they've not nailed that down. Left wing back's been Marvin Johnson for the vast majority of the season. They've got a settled back three centre halves for the time being. They'll have to address that when McGuinness goes next week. But that right side of the defence is, like I say, they've had Iorfa there, they've had Hunt, they've had Mighton, they've had Wilkes. He's not kind of nailed that down. So yeah, I think if there is an area or a weakness, that would be it. Midfield, like I say, if Bannon plays, usually have 2 alongside him. And then up front, they've got, I think, the best pool of strikers in the division. You've got Lee Gregory, Michael Smith, Callum Patterson, Malik Wilkes, Josh Windass. So there's a lot of firepower there. So yeah, for me, they're a strong team for that level, but they're going to be tested, obviously, by Premier League quality tomorrow, whatever team they play. I just want to ask you about Jacob Murphy. What's his? So obviously he's a player Wednesday had a couple of seasons back, really impressive. Is he still, in the Eddie Howe's plans long term, do you think, or?
Long term, I'm not too sure, but he has been Eddie Howe's most used substitute. Eddie Howe has big faith in him. We saw against Arsenal on Tuesday. He was one of the first subs brought on. So I think Eddie Howe does value him. Whether he's going to be here long term, Newcastle obviously are building to challenge at the top of the table. I mean, they're doing that at the moment ahead of schedule, but there probably will be some tough decisions to be made sooner rather than later. He's a boyhood fan as well. Yeah. There's no room for sentiment in this game, I guess. He's clearly a talent, but whether he's a top 4 talent is another question. But yeah, you can't doubt his work rate, his effort, his desire, and his love for the club as well. I think everyone's keeping their fingers crossed that he can find a bit of form and start scoring a few goals. He's been unlucky. He always tries to chip the keeper for some reason, and it never quite comes off for him. But yeah, no fault in him. Every time he pulls on that shirt, he gives us all. But long term, you probably see Newcastle investing in maybe a better quality, winger. But if we move to the Championship next season with Sheffield Wednesday, he'd be one of the best players in that league without a shadow of a doubt, I think.
I was going to say that's the balance, isn't it? Obviously, what Newcastle's trying to do, rather than rush it, it's kind of like incremental, signings. But obviously, the sacrifice of that is that these players will help you get there. after a while, you have to make a judgment and say, are they good enough to get to that level?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you look at Jacob Murphy and he kind of epitomises what Eddie Howe is building at Newcastle, and a large part of that is based on the character of the player. I mean, you look at what Jacob Murphy had to go through to get to this stage. It looked, at least on 2 opportunities, like his time at Newcastle was over.
Yeah.
And then Eddie Howe comes in and he's one of those players who's kind of turned his career around at St James's Park, but his attitude's just absolutely brilliant. And there are few better sights, I think, at a full-time whistle than when you see that big smile on Jacob Murphy's face, because he's a Newcastle fan. It's like when Dan Burn, Dan Burn, another Newcastle fan, and the smile when they've won a game or they've earned a hard point, they just absolutely loving life. I don't know if you've seen the after every game Newcastle win, there's a photograph from the dressing room. Put out, and Jacob Murphy's probably the first player I look for. I just want to see, because we've all, everyone listening to this podcast, the majority of them will be a Newcastle fan, hopefully, and he's just living our dream, and it's just always nice to see how happy he is, and he's always smiling. So a great character to have around the dressing room. Eddie Howe definitely seems to like him. It's going to be interesting though to see what happens in the summer, because I think he'll have suitors as well. He's clearly a talented player. He would definitely have takers, I think, in the lower end of the Premier League as well as top end of the Championship.
Is he out of contract in the summer, or?
I think he's got a couple of years left to run. I'm not entirely sure when it runs out. I think there was a bit of discussion last season that it was coming up. But I think then he had a clause activated, if I'm not mistaken. It kind of went under the radar a little bit, but I don't think. Let me just try and find out where the contract lies. So 2027, actually.
All right. Another 4 years then.
Yeah, a wee while to run, 27. So, it's just whether you can step up a level. And I'm sure the kind of carrot and stick kind of analogy where, you're going to want to be part of this journey. Like Sean Longstaff, like Dan Burn, he's going to want to be part of the journey which sees his club reach the top level of the Premier League and playing in Europe. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. We've got a few comments again. Roger asks, just for a bit more information, Ricky, on the formation that you expect tomorrow.
Like I said, I'd imagine it'll be a bit similar to what they played the last few weeks. So 3-5-2, so 3 centre halves, then the 2 wing backs pushing high up. Well, maybe not as high up as they were against Cambridge. And then Josh Windass operated as in the midfield 3. He was the furthest one forward. So, most of the time it was a front 3 basically. But yeah, 3-5-2 I would imagine would be the preferred system tomorrow.
And do they like a lot of the ball? Because Newcastle tends to like to press teams, rather than have the ball at their feet.
I think it's horses for courses, really. I mean, I don't expect them to boss it tomorrow. That's for certain. But yeah, when at Hillsborough, 95% of the time that they are, in control of the ball. And yeah, they can mix it up as well. There was a few weeks ago, David Stockdale was the goalkeeper. He'd kept, I think, 11 clean sheets, and he made a few errors. Errors were kind of creeping into his game. I think one of the biggest criticisms was this passing out from the back. This almost like stubbornness about passing it out from the back for the sake of it. And he actually mixed it up a bit, and that resulted in a goal. So they are able to go long when needed. So yeah, it's about, I think, not sticking to those rigid styles of play. I don't know. I'm not sure about, obviously, Newcastle. Not seen bits and bobs of them, but in terms of how they play this season, is it a lot more front foot than recent seasons?
Oh, definitely. Like going forward, they're a force to be reckoned with. But I would argue they're maybe the best pressing team in the Premier League. They don't give the opposition a moment on the ball. But then they're also just excellent, defensively. The amount of clean sheets they kept this season. We saw against Arsenal, they frustrated them. The best team in the Premier League couldn't get past. And Nick Pope's been a bargain at 10, 11 million pounds. I think he's kept some like 10, 11 clean sheets just across the whole team from front to back. it's a totally different setup, a totally different attitude, a totally different approach to what it was 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how they do against Sheffield Wednesday, because you went into Cambridge last season in the FA Cup. Newcastle were in a horrendous position.
Yeah.
The confidence, wasn't there. And while it was a shock to get beat by Cambridge, I don't think it was. It wasn't expected, but it was kind of just, well, this is where Newcastle are. This is, they're in serious trouble here.
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, third in the Premier League Cup quarterfinals, they go down there tomorrow, fully expecting to win, knowing they're going to have a hard job at it. But if they're not in the fourth round of the FA Cup come Saturday night, there will be real disappointment that they've been beaten by Sheffield Wednesday.
I was going to say, obviously, it's kind of strange, isn't it? Obviously, years and years of Mike Ashley and fans complaining about not having much ambition in the cups, and then now it's kind of flipped on its head. Do you think fans are kind of, obviously the Premier, because you're in such a good position in the Premier League, do you think fans are a bit hesitant to go deep in the cup competitions, or are they embracing it?
Oh no, they take a cup over anything. It's been 1969 the last time Newcastle lifted a major honour. So to win a cup this season would be unbelievable. Eddie Howe kind of set the stall out. The owners set the stall out. They wanted to go out and take every cup seriously. Mentioned there the quarter-final against Leicester on Tuesday. Newcastle got that far under Steve Bruce, and they played Brentford when Brentford won the championship, and it was an absolute embarrassment the way they went out of that competition.
Yeah.
It was like Brentford with the established Premier League side. Yeah. Whereas this time around, Eddie Howe he's playing his strongest team. He's taking everything seriously. And it's how a Premier League side should really try and approach a cup. You want to win every game, and that's Eddie Howe's approach to management. Every game is winnable. Every game they should win every game. And to get deep in the competition is something every Newcastle United fan wants. Commentator Dan Kane saying we want it all, and we're sick of saying it's 1969 since the last cup. We're sick of saying 55 since the last domestic cup. It's Newcastle fans want that trophy, and hopefully it comes this season. FA Cup at the expense of Sheffield Wednesday, quarter-final there against Leicester on Tuesday. It's just exciting to have a ownership with ambition. It really is. It really is. Are you looking forward to covering the game, to seeing the likes of maybe St Max and Callum Wilson playing Sheffield Wednesday?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, it's in League One. There isn't that many, kind of blue ribbon games, if you like, this caliber. Certainly not. You've got big clubs in this league, obviously Ipswich, Portsmouth, but it's a different scale when it's a cup game, and especially, like I say, under the lights at Hillsborough, live on TV, big crowd. I think it's got all the ingredients to be a really good game. And also, like I said, that Man City game when they played 3 years ago, I think that was only a 1-0 defeat that day. But Wednesday were in a really poor run of form under Gary Monk. They weren't. I think that the lineup he put out as well was really, they had bigger fish to fry, basically. Whereas now, I think Wednesday can go at it. They know they've got a midweek game. I wasn't aware that do you play Leicester on Tuesday then?
On Tuesday, yeah.
Right. So that that might play on Eddie Howe's mind, I suppose. Although whatever team he puts out is going to be strong. But I think it'll be, like I say, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be a good contest, an intriguing contest, and one where Wednesday can kind of do themselves proud on a national, in front of a national audience.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, it is interesting that Newcastle play on Tuesday, but it goes back to what you were saying at the start. Momentum is key. You won't want to. Newcastle will not want to lose the game against Sheffield Wednesday because they don't want to go out of the competition. But B, you don't want to go into a quarter-final on the back of a defeat, especially in the game where you are favourites. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that favourites tag. But anyhow, said that in his press conference, he's expecting a tough game. How will this end then? What's your score prediction?
I'll be optimistic and go for a replay. I'm going to say 1-1. I know just someone to put there on the comments. I had to actually remind myself what the rules are this season because they've changed that often. But it's definitely back to normal. So finishes level, replay, then extra time and pens if needed. So yeah, I'll take a replay, a nice trip up to St James's.
I was going to say you want to trip up to Tyneside. I'm not sure Eddie Howe would like a replay. Yeah, obviously it'd be cool, just like Sheffield Wednesday will be to going out to win this. Well, I mean, actually, will they? Because sometimes in these fixtures you do get the so-called underdog looking to frustrate the opposition and actually playing for a replay, playing for a draw. But I suppose when we say underdog, you know that when you think about an underdog, it's often like Cambridge last season.
Yeah,
Sheffield Wednesday maybe not so of the tag of an underdog because they're going strong in League One. They've got some decent players. But will they be going out to win this in 90 minutes, or will they maybe looking to get a draw and trying to frustrate Newcastle and then looking forward to a trip up to Tyneside?
I think they'll they'll definitely go out to win it. I think, like I said, I think the team, as much as it'll be impossible to predict, I think it'll be strong. So I think this competition for places, they, like I said earlier, they want to get out of this league this season, no doubt about it. But I think you don't do yourself any harm putting a strong performance in against Newcastle. Like I said, the fans just want to see them go for it, have a go at them. If you get beat, fair dues. But if you get beat by the other side showing their quality and having to show that quality. Say, for instance, Newcastle's got to bring off Isaac and Wilson or Trippier, etc. If they have to do that to win the game, I think that says a lot about how good Wednesday are going. And yeah, like I said, the worst thing would be to just kind of roll over and take a 3-0, 4-0 beating. It
seems like the thought is very much similar to how Newcastle United fans like to see their team play. There's that famous banner that always does the round. It did the round on the morning of the takeover day, where it was, we don't demand a club that wins, we demand a club that tries. And it seems like that's a similar train of thought down at Sheffield Wednesday.
Definitely, yeah. Like I said, I mean, these are what you call proper clubs. I know that kind of means nothing, but they are, Newcastle, Wednesday, Everton, Villa. These are proper historical, traditional football clubs. And as I said earlier, Newcastle are at the level now where they feel they should be, and where they're kind of making up for lost time in a way. Wednesday need to do that. They need to get up to the very least the Championship. Look, can sort all that afterwards in terms of getting to the Prem, but they shouldn't be in this level. This is the third time in 18 years they've been in League One. It took them 2 years on the previous two occasions, so hopefully, they can do it again. Second time of asking, but yeah, I think that has to be the goal. You look at the support, the history, tradition. Like you said earlier, Newcastle getting beat by Cambridge is a shock. Plucky Cambridge, if you like, but I wouldn't say if Wednesday beat them, and I think Newcastle would probably agree with this, it'd be a shock in terms of where they are in the levels in the pyramid, but in terms of a shock, you wouldn't say it was a massive surprise. But that's not going to say it's going to be easy. Like I say, I think it'd be a really tough one, given how well Newcastle's done, the feel-good factor. So yeah, I'm going to plump for a replay. I think Michael Smith would enjoy a replay anyway.
Yeah, definitely coming back to his boyhood club and playing at St James's Park would definitely suit him, you would imagine. I'm going to go for Newcastle win. I think I've got 2-0 in my head. So I'm going to go 2-0, but I think it'll be a tough game and be an entertaining one. But yeah, 2-0 to Newcastle United is my prediction, and building that momentum going into that quarter-final, which of course is going to be a big game for Newcastle. Well, Ricky, thank you very much for popping on to Everything is Black and White podcast. To you guys watching and listening, thank you very much for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk to keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news. And Ricky, where can we find coverage of today's press conference?
It'll be over on the Yorkshire Live website. So just trying to remember the time. So yeah, Michael Smith's coming up first. So he's about 1 p.m. and then Darren Moore will be on afterwards about 2 o'clock.
So there we have it. You can hear what the opposition manager and Michael Smith, the boyhood Newcastle United fan, have to say ahead of the FA Cup clash on Saturday evening. Thank you very much for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your day.